Are we finally getting third-party RF lenses for the Canon RF system? We have some very good news potentially coming this year, and more news on lenses from Canon. So let's jump in. So for this video, I thought it would be nice to have one of my favorite lenses along for the ride. This is my Tamron 24-70 f2.8 VCDI lens. I've had this lens with me for 12 years. And I point that out only because this is a third-party lens that I purchased for the Canon EF system. It was almost half as much as the equivalent 24-70 on the Canon system, which at that time did not have image stabilization, and this one did with its vibration compensation. The optical quality was phenomenal at the time, and I have yet to see a reason to replace it. It works. And for me, it has been a workhorse. I actually did a family photo session with this lens just a few days ago. And that's why talking about third-party lenses is so important. As photographers, we traditionally keep our glass for a long time. I've had 2 or 3 bodies since I got this lens. So are we finally going to get some third-party glass for the RF system, or are we just looking at speculation? Third-party RF autofocus glass has been one of the most requested, anticipated, and debated items since Canon launched the RF mount. I've spoken with a number of now Sony shooters who were previously Canon shooters who love their autofocus, who love their system, but when they wanted to go to mirrorless and were faced with the transition of buying all new RF glass or adapting their EF glass, they saw the ability to sell and buy into a system that allowed them both native and third-party options. So Canon users have been faced with 2 potential camps: those loyal to Canon glass and those who are hoping for a more kind of diverse, open, and affordable third-party opportunity. But in that camp, here's the latest news. Industry insiders are now signaling that full-frame RF autofocus lenses from a non-Canon manufacturer will launch within the year, maybe even a little bit sooner. But don't expect Tamron or Sigma to be the ones that we're talking about first out of the gate. It actually looks like Chinese brand Viltrox will be the first to blaze the trail here. And that could be a significant development considering the fact that Viltrox has a growing reputation of delivering AF lenses for other mirrorless systems. So moving beyond the when, there's also a question of how. So Canon has tight control over the RF mount. This is known. And nobody really knows what the details are in these closed door, backroom licensing deals and what's required, what kind of performance is necessary. But what's clear is that Canon has been very cautious in releasing any sort of third-party AF options and have really kept it just to the APS-C lineup. And even then, only to select brands, even with that slow rollout. And yet, Canon has held a dominant market position for over 2 decades across the mirrorless and DSLR camera market. But here's the thing, since mirrorless has come onto the scene, Sony and their early embrace of third-party AF lenses and the mirrorless system has played a huge role in attracting younger shooters to their ecosystem. Canon's careful approach has definitely left room for another company to come in and effectively match them beat for beat at the top end of the market. Canon is betting that their native glass at the prices that they sell them for, along with the features that they have in their cameras and honestly, their brand cachet, is going to be enough to keep this slow roll going. But I can tell you, it can't last forever. But speaking of Canon native lenses, let's talk about a new lens that we have and ask whether or not a $329 kit lens can really impress, or are we just checking boxes? The RFS 14-30 f4-6.3 IS STM PZ has been getting strong marks in optical tests. It's designed as a stock lens for the R50V, but it's fully compatible with any RF mount body. And with its compact body, it covers a 22 to 48 millimeter equivalent range, which makes it relatively versatile for landscapes, vlogging, and portraits. But the one feature that it has that kind of stands out is its power zoom feature. This allows it to deliver smooth focal transitions, as well as packing optical image stabilization. Now it does have STM autofocusing, which is quick and can be relatively quiet, obviously not as good as the VC or USM systems in other Canon lenses, but the lead screw STM autofocus system is less expensive, which keeps it lighter and easier to pair with entry-level APS-C cameras. But they are using a spherical and ultra-low dispersion elements, plus a super spectra coating. And that's where it's paying off, because tests are actually reporting that they're seeing minimal flare, minimal ghosting, and good sharpness and contrast for the price. It's also got a relatively short minimum focusing distance at less than 6 inches. So in summary, if you're shooting crop sensor on the RF mount, and you're looking for an affordable, video-ready, easy-to-carry lightweight lens, this might be something you want to take a close look at. Moving off of lenses for just a moment, I saw some interesting commentary out on some of the sites over the last few days talking about the R5C and the possibility of a Mark II. Now, we've seen rumors for an R5C Mark II since really before the R5 Mark II came out. But when the R5 Mark II came out, we actually saw a firmware update that really added some impressive features to the R5C, and there were some questions that came up as to whether or not they would continue to either update it or roll out an updated hardware option. But Canon executives have been pretty clear that the R5C was a one-off. They saw the absolute explosion of popularity for the R5 when it first came out, but when you combine that with the record time options and the overheating issues, they knew they needed to come up with a solution, and the R5C was that for folks looking primarily at shooting video. But since then, we've gotten a number of cinema cameras that Canon feels really fills that gap. And Canon is still planning on slotting in other cameras below the established C80 and C400 models. At my recent trip to the NAB trade show, looking at the cameras that they had on display, it was mostly C80s and C400s, although I did catch the occasional R5C hidden down there with them. But that means that there is a place for a slightly lower end cinema model than the C80 or the C400. But we should see formal announcements about new cinema cameras before the IBC trade show in Amsterdam in September, maybe even earlier. So unfortunately, no R5C Mark II, but there are a lot more cinema EOS cameras on the horizon. And for some of those cameras, it looks like Canon really wants to give us more full frame power zooms that hopefully don't break the bank. Canon's got a number of patents suggesting a major shift. They'll be pushing internal power zoom capability to a number of their lenses, specifically full frame lenses. Now, until now, only the Z lenses offered power zoom for full frame. They required pricey external accessories, making the lens plus the zoom motor over a $4,000 investment. Not really ideal for up-and-coming creators and small production teams. But these new patents reveal a range of constant f4 aperture zooms, all with direct PZ integration. Now, these are considered non-L affordable options, and they include the 16-35 f4 PZ, a 24-50 f4 PZ, as well as an 18-45 f4 and a 20-60 f4 alternative. These are all relatively compact, have back focusing distances of about 14 millimeters, which suggests lightweight builds for run and gun creators and videographers. Now, these are just patents. There's no guarantee that any of these actually become retail products. But the direction that Canon is going is clear. They're listening to creators who want pro features, but they want smart price points. And considering the fact that we are potentially expecting an R6 Mark III and other cinema cameras on the way, it makes sense that they would expand the affordable side of the PZ lineup. But I'd be curious to hear from you down in the comments if PZ lenses, if power zoom lenses are something that you are looking for as a creator. So ultra fast lenses have been kind of the top of optical innovation. We talk about zoom, we talk about focus motor, we talk about stabilization, but really the things that get the headlines these days still are fast glass. So could we be getting some glass that's going to completely change the rules in terms of cinematic imaging? Would you shoot at f.7? Now, first, we have the potential for an upcoming wide-angle prime, an f1.4. I did a video on this last week, aimed specifically at astrophotographers. We're expecting probably 12, maybe 14 millimeters, ultra-wide, razor-thin depth of field shots. Ultra-wide and phenomenal for anyone who loves ultra-wide, razor-thin depth of field photos. Interestingly, this lens will not use a VCM motor, but an STM motor to keep the size a little more manageable, though it's not going to be small enough to be like a pancake. But we've got patent information out of Japan that outlines a 24mm f.7. Yes, f.7. That is a legendary speed. We've only had a handful of cinema lenses in film history that have been able to achieve that kind of design. And Canon's design looks to tackle some of the tricky issues like field curvature, focus breathing, and aberrations that you traditionally see with a lens that is that extreme. So on paper, it looks like this lens would both be sharp and cinematic. But manufacturing a 24mm f.7 would be monumental. It would literally change what's possible for photo and video in low light. But obviously the assumption would be that it would be huge and incredibly expensive, if they could even make one. So that's it for me and Canon lens news today. Thank you so much for watching. Go and hit the subscribe button and hit like if you found this video interesting. This video, like most of my videos, is sponsored by me and my photography business, Joseph Blake Photography. I've got links down below if you want to book me for your family or individual portraits, or if your business needs photography. I work predominantly here in Southern Nevada in Las Vegas, as well as in Southern California. You'll be able to find me in LA, Riverside, Orange County, and San Diego for most of the summer. And again, links down below if you'd like to talk about setting up a shoot. Another way that you can support the channel, I've got memberships available, very affordable membership tiers where I am offering free resources to all of my members, as well as early access and live videos. So check those out as well. An easy way to support the channel, I've got gear links down below that includes all the gear that I use both here in the studio, out when I'm shooting portraits, and when I'm out on adventures. I also have a 2025 starter guide for everything that you're gonna need to get started creating content and photography. Obviously, a free way to support the channel is to follow me on all of my social media feeds down below, including Instagram. Now, I am still doing my Instagram giveaway, and when I hit 1,000 followers on Instagram, I am going to be giving away a ton of the gear that I have received to review in the last year. So if you're looking for free gear, find me on Instagram, follow me there, comment on this video that you've done that, like my photos, share them everywhere, and you will be entered to get some of this free gear when I hit 1,000 followers. But as always, you can just hit the subscribe button, hit the bell, and hit the like button. That goes a long way to tell YouTube I'm doing the right thing. And again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.